Chapter 70, The twilight of the year is cold. Xie really looked at her for a long time. Zhang Xuning felt that his gaze was a little cold. Xie actually asked, "Does Yan Lin know?" Although she never asked explicitly, Zhang Xuning could probably guess that Xie knew about her relationship with Yan Lin, or rather, Yan Lin's thoughts about her. Originally, I thought that this person was a little too lenient, but when I thought of the speculation that Yu Fangyan had mentioned to him in the previous life, I felt that if this guess was true, it was understandable that Xie cared about this matter. As for Yan Linier, she likes Zhang She. He shouldn't know, after all, how long has she been reborn and come back. But on the day of the floor, those words were not spoken, and Yan Lin also understood. It was only when he didn't want to hear her say it with his own ears that he told her not to speak. Xie tugged at the corners of his lips, and smiled slightly. "If I were Yan Lin, I would have stripped your skin and smoked your backbone. I have never heard that you knew Zhang Shat in the past, that is, you secretly admired it in the past, and it may not be wishful thinking when you meet and fall in love today. You like people, but people may not be able to climb you." Zhang Xuning listened to the first half of the sentence but felt terrified. When he heard the latter sentence, he almost jumped up, a little annoyed. "You just climbed high, what nonsense are you talking about? It looks like someone has stepped on the tail, and it's a little bit baring its teeth and claws." Xie didn't get used to seeing her. His eyes deepened, and he was as silent as a cold pool. "I just said a word, and you jumped to your feet is so uncontrollable," and in a few words, he exposes his weaknesses. "Do you Ning feel that Xie is a good person and can be trusted, or do you think that everyone in the world is good and has no defense against anyone?" Zhang Xuning suddenly shuddered. Xie said calmly, "If I were you, I would always hide it in my heart if I liked it, neither announcing it nor teaching others to know. When he meets me today, he won't do anything to you for the time being, and when he meets others every day, he wants to deal with you and pinch you, so he will first go to make it difficult and cover up. At that time, you will see how to write the words harm others and yourself. It's worthy of being able to play with Yan Lin. Stupid is just as stupid." He had never spoken so politely. Zhang Xuning didn't even expect him to reprimand herself. Even Yan Lin scolded together. She only looked at him in a daze for a while, and felt that what he said was really not wrong. Was she happy and confused, and she actually revealed her heart in front of Xie? But looking back, it was obvious that Xie saw through it first, and she admitted it. "I was suddenly afraid." Xie was just scaring her, so that she could take it seriously and remember it for a long time, and when she saw that she was finally afraid, she knew that she had listened to what she said, although she didn't know why she was getting more and more unhappy, but there was no time to waste here. He handed the lantern directly to her. He said, "It's too late, let's go back." Zhang Xuning took the palace lamp, but there was only this lamp, and she subconsciously wanted to ask, "What about you?" but Xie had already turned his back and walked in the direction of leaving the palace along the high palace wall. The darkness around him weighed on him. This person is not the same as Zhang Shat. Zhang Shat walked in the night, and people felt that there was light on his body, and after Xie left the light and walked into the darkness, he merged with the darkness, as if he had come from it.
星号.
After experiencing the raid of Yang's Hizai, everyone was shocked when they went back, and they were a little afraid, so they didn't dare to go back to the room like this, but gathered together and sat in the Liashui pavilion, drinking hot tea to suppress the shock. Because it was found out that it was the palace maid who framed her, no one dared to ask the palace maid to serve at this moment. There are a total of 7 people in the cabinet, excluding Zhang Xuning, who has not yet returned. Chen Shiyi said indifferently, "Even if she is lucky, she is bold, she dares to directly confront the Queen Mother, and she dares to say that she is a courtier, not a palace lady, and it should be investigated by Jinyue or the criminal department. Otherwise, we're afraid we won't be able to see her alive. Yao Rongrong remembered that detail for some reason. At that time, it happened to be the eunuch who knelt outside the cunning palace when he went out of the palace to find someone in the criminal department. She whispered to herself, "Is it really a fluke?" Xiao Shu glanced at her and didn't interject. Zhou Baoying blinked, and couldn't help but look out the door. "Didn't Sister Ning go to thank you? It should be over in 1 or 2 sentences, why haven't you come back now?" Yao Shi's face was a little gloomy. Yu Yu observed the words and looks, and almost immediately noticed this small abnormality, and her mind turned, thinking of the relationship between Yao Shi and Zhang Shat, and suddenly understood what Yao Shi was minding. She's never afraid to add fuel to the fire. When even covered his lips and smiled, "The grace of saving lives is another charcoal in the snow. Of course, I have to say a few more words. But I didn't expect that this legendary Zhang Shat, although he looked a little colder, was a talent, a righteous gentleman, and Sister Yao Shi was so blessed." Even if he knew that Yu Yu was such a person who fanned the flames and stirred up trouble everywhere, he was warned by Xiao Shu and Chen Shi that this person could not be trusted. Even if he was not far away, he should not listen to it, and he should not have a deep friendship. But who can calm down when he hears this? Zhang Shanai is her future husband. Under the melon field and plums, Zhang Xuning should avoid suspicion no matter what. In the end, she is a wild girl raised in the countryside and has no rules. Yao Shi put down the teacup in his hand heavily. Of course, Chen Shi also knows what Yu Yu is, but the enemy of the enemy is a friend, and she rarely agrees. Yes, Yao Shi's sister is so blessed. However, Zhang Xuning was unlucky. Although she escaped this time, she offended the Queen Mother ruthlessly. Now everyone is watching, the Queen Mother may not be able to do anything to her, but in the future, she will still be in the palace. Even if Her Royal Highness the eldest princess is protected, she is afraid that her life will be sad, and she may not be able to please her as much as she is now. How many people in the palace don't step on the low and praise the high? If you know that the Queen Mother doesn't like it and rushes to curry favor, she is looking for death. As soon as Chen Shi said this, some people gloated, but some people were somewhat worried. It's just that the words of the arranger behind this are afraid of being heard after all. After all, it's not that she hasn't been bumped into by Zhang Xuning, and now this time is very special, so that she heard that she mistakenly thought that they had framed her, so she was really wronged, so she quickly changed the topic. Yu Yu thought that she had been in the palace for several days, and she would be released from the palace to rest in 2 days, so she thought of explaining the things in the palace before entering the palace this time, and suddenly felt that this was an excellent opportunity. I don't know, but these people in the palace are well informed. She heard them talk about the scenery of Yangzhou, so she interjected, I heard that the salt merchants in Yangzhou are all rich, and their lives are very luxurious, but I am afraid that they are not worse than us. Xiao Shu said, salt is in the world, and anyone who does a big business has money. And the Zhonghui salt field is the largest salt field in the state capitals, rich in salt production. Natural salt merchants gather, compare with each other, do not get tired of eating, not to mention that it is better than us, it is not necessarily worse than the palace. Everyone has never been to Yangzhou, and they can't help but be amazed when they hear it. Yu Yu's eyes flashed, and she said, but I heard that the artesian well salt field in Shu is also very famous. How come I rarely hear that the salt merchants over there are rich? There was no need for Xiao Shu to speak. Chen Shi had glanced at her lightly, and said, the Shu Dao moat has always been difficult to pass, the news of the ancient blockade has not been transmitted, and the salt field of the artesian well is not a first-class salt field. How can it be compared with Yangzhou? It seems that no one knows Ren Weizi yet. Yu secretly pondered the legendary Zhou tube well. If it is true, the artesian well can also leap to the first-class salt field, if you can get a piece of the pie. Just when she wanted to ask about the salt in the world, Zhang Xuning came back. Fang Miao saw it first and shouted. Chen Shi smiled meaningfully, why has the second girl Zhang been gone for so long? Zhang Xuning was still carrying a lantern in her hand, stopped and stood under the eaves, only blew it out with her eyes, glanced back at her, and said lightly, I met Mr. Xie in the middle of the road, and I was stopped and asked a few words. Everyone saw that she was not very energetic, and then remembered that she was always trained by Xie Wei's side, and thought that she was once again unpleased. It's inexplicably a little relieving now. Zhou Baoying opened a pair of big eyes, and said a little softly, Mr. Xie, don't scold you again, right? Zhang Xuning saw that everyone was sitting in the house and having a tea party together, and she didn't want to participate, so she told a big lie and said, it's okay, just tell me to go learn the piano tomorrow. A few people didn't believe it was so easy, and they all laughed in their hearts. Zhang Xuning only said, I was really frightened and affected today, and I also implicated you in a fright with me, I'm really sorry. I'm a little tired, so I'll go back to my room and go to bed, and you should rest early. After saying that, she casually hung the lantern under the porch, and then went back to her room along the porch. The room that had been turned over had been put in order. It's just that when Zhang Xuning sat down on the seemingly neat bed again, she still felt shuddering, as if she was in a cold prison. Asterisk. For the next 2 days, the palace was surprisingly quiet. Zhang Xuning never heard any gossip again. Maybe it's still spreading, but none of them can be transmitted to Yang Hizai anymore, and the whole world is as if nothing happened. Only when she raised her eyes when she walked through the long palace road and saw the occasional palace person handing her curious glances, she could get a glimpse of the undercurrent hidden under this calm. The chance bump into her that night didn't seem to change her relationship with Xie Wei. As usual, there are 2 classes in 3 days, and the piano practice does not fall behind. It's just that it's hard for her to be calm. Xie Wei asked her to sit in front of the piano for a few days, but it was difficult to calm her restlessness, and then he simply ignored it, and only asked her to sit next to her, while he sat on the side of the bookcase, buried himself in the case, and dealt with the piles of official documents, and even said less. Sometimes Zhang Xuning thinks, maybe this is Xie Wei's ordinary appearance. Until the day before leaving the palace to rest, she finally met Zhang Bao in the corner of the imperial garden. Zhang Bao whispered to her that Her Royal Highness the eldest princess and His Royal Highness the King of Linzi went to Sinaing Palace that night to intercede for the Yanji Marquis mansion, which angered the saint and the Queen Mother. One was punished and grounded so he couldn't come to school these days, and the other was scolded by the saint and punished to go to the temple and knelt for 3 hours. She couldn't help but be stunned. Zhang Bao raised his eyes to look at her again, a sigh flashed in his eyes, and told her that the palace maid who framed her died in vain on the day she was imprisoned in the Shen Criminal Division, and she didn't ask anything. Zhang Xuning didn't know how she got to the side hall of Fengchen Palace. She's late for the day. But Xie Wei hasn't come yet. She waited for a long time and didn't see anyone, sitting in front of the Jiaoan Gukan, only to feel that although the room was warm, her hands and feet were cold. The 2 carved windows are half open. A whimper came in from outside. Xie Wei's desk has always been neatly tied, the brushes are washed and hung on the shelves, the used or unused paper is pressed with a ruler or paperweight, and the wind can only turn a few pages. However, there is a page that only rests lightly in the corner. As soon as the wind blew, it fell to the ground. Zhang Xunning's gaze couldn't help falling, and after a while, before Xie Wei came, he got up and walked over, picked it up, and lowered his eyes to look at the handwriting on it. It wasn't a letter, it was a newspaper from 2 days ago. At this moment, her heart sank into the ice cave. Yanji Haofo, there is a suspicion of collusion against the party. Before it is investigated, the heavy army besieges the mansion, and it is not allowed to leave. Buckle buckle. At that moment, there was a knock at the door of the temple. The little eunuch who was waiting outside the hall said through the door, "The young master has come to spread the word. I can't come here today, I am tired of the second girl Zhang and waiting. Just tomorrow I will leave the palace, and I will also ask the girl to rest for a few days." Zhang Xuning looked out the window, and before she knew it, it was already cold. There were only 15 days left before the young man's crowning ceremony.